So once we have done our gender analysis, we have our baseline, we have our results, and we have communicated them. Remember, the communication, it's really important. We communicate the results. So, of course, we create this sense of need of a gender equality plan in the institution. Then we go to our next step, which is already now, yes, setting up the gender equality plan. So we should have identified the main areas for intervention and the pressing areas that need to be tackled. And we set out the priorities for our organization now, considering these results, okay, this initial assessment, and considering also the available resources. So what are the basic steps within this step, okay, the basic actions to set up a gender equality plan? Okay, so the first one would be, before starting, just get inspiration, which probably we all do that, no, for anything we do in life many times. So get inspirations for measures implemented by other organizations, but remember to adapt them to your context, to the specificities of your institution, okay? Then we need to define our objectives, and our objectives will be based on the analysis done, okay? They should be tailored, and they should cover at least the three basic domains that we were talking about. Remember, the three gender equality objectives of the European Commission and the ERA roadmap. But of course, they should be tailored to your situation. So there is no copy-paste of objectives here, okay? And they should, an objective, a good objective, should specify what you want to achieve in relation to a specific target group, and clearly define the positive outcome that you want to reach, right? It sounds like we all have for sure elaborate millions of objectives, like for example, to eliminate the institutional barriers to career advancement of women. So we have the outcome, we have the target group, okay? So it's not that, shouldn't be that difficult, but it's not always that clear. Then, sorry? Can I continue? Somebody talking there, sorry. Okay, next, we need to define measures and indicators, okay? And at least we should have one per objective. So what are the basic requirements here for our measures? The measures must be based on the empirical problem analysis that we have done, our gender analysis. They should address at least one of the gender equality objectives explicitly. Sometimes we can have measures that can tackle a couple of objectives. And then we need to formulate specific targets and target groups, and all the measures should be subject to monitoring. So we need to develop clear indicators for each measure, okay, for each one. So two key aspects here. First, we should design our measures adopting this structural change perspective, okay, this fixing the organization perspective, and avoid what you see here, the deficit model perspective. Oops, I just wanted to mark here, avoid the deficit model perspective, because this is important, okay? Which would be this kind of patronizing perspective under this fixing the women approach, where it's like as if women needed more teaching than men. For example, when all the actions you have in one gender equality plan is like giving teaching leadership to women, or teaching women how to do whatever, okay? This is like a deficit model perspective. So be sure that we avoid this. And then we should include different type of actions, okay? We can go through a list of examples here, but you have a link to the gender equality, to the GERA tool, which provides a list of, lots of examples of different actions. You have that at the end of the presentation, okay? And then our objectives and our measures and indicators, as you see here, should be SMART, which means it goes for the S goes for specific. So they should answer to the basic questions of what, why, and how, and when, and where. They should be, the M goes for measurable. So they should establish both quantitative and qualitative indicators. It should be attainable. So make sure that they're just like not out of reach. Okay, it's something that can be achieved, actually can be achieved. It should be realistic. So this means that can be feasible within a certain time frame, and that they are time related. So we should indicate when the objective or when the measures, when are we planning them to be achieved, okay? Which leads us to the last one, which is defined in the time frame here. So we need to define a realistic timeline for our gender equality plan. And first we need to set out like the overall duration of the plan, of course, if it's going to be 3 years, 4 years, or whatever, depending on the resources and so on. And then we need to define a realistic timeline for its implementation, okay, depending on measures that we plan and everything. And do not forget to include and to establish specific monitoring periods to report on the progress of our gender equality plan, the progress achieved, okay? Next action would be to promote participation of actors at all levels. So we look back to our map factors that we did in our first step, and we see in each, for each measure, for each step, which actor should be participating, okay? And this is important because normally the process of already drafting the gender equality plan, it's, you know, they are not like very participatory. Their measures are normally drafted only by in-house gender experts, which is a team of a couple of people just drafting the gender equality plan. But a participatory approach will help us, will provide developing more meaningful measures to all the actors involved. So in the end, it will also help the implementation of the measures, right? And it is also crucial to involve senior management and leadership positions in the definition of the measures of the plan, right? The next would be to identify resources, including existing one. Remember what we just said when planning the measures, okay? So we need to identify and use all the resources available within and outside the organization. And this means, of course, financial and human resources, but also others like data collection procedures, like existing policies, services, internal groups or internal structures that we can count on. Of course, knowledge is also a resource, communication tools, and so on. Also the intangible resources, like, for example, the supportive and the enthusiast attitudes among the leaders and among other people, other key agents in the institution, okay? And we should build on that existing resources. And then we need to set clear responsibilities, okay? Many gender equality plans, they lack this one. They set the action, they even go and set nice indicators and everything, but then they don't have the responsibilities clearly set. So for each measure, we need to set this. An agreement needs to be made on the team that is going to be involved in the implementation of each measure of the gender equality plan, okay? So again, remember your map of actors here to set the responsibilities, and the gender equality plan should clearly indicate who is responsible for what and when, okay? Then we need to build alliances. We will need support by stakeholders at all levels, and as you were mentioning, also from outside stakeholders, outside agents, okay? And also from top down and down to top as well, not only from the, and also from the outside. So the practical tip here would be to explain, to take your time to explain the benefits, okay? To explain what a gender equality plan implies, what are the benefits for each stakeholder and for each agent and for each group of the organization. And also the practical tip would be to adapt your speech according to the profile that you're addressing, okay? We want to get them in, okay? So take into account that this effort, it's going to be a long-term effort. It needs to be continued throughout the whole implementation process. So make friends here. And then we need to think long-term. We need to think about sustainability. We need to ensure sustainability here. Okay, bear in mind that the resources to promote gender equality are never unlimited, and neither is the duration of our gender equality plan. So we need to ensure sustainability, the sustainability of our actions. And for that, it's important to design them, to embed practices in the normal routines and normal procedures and policies of the organization. So we can either change the existing ones, or we can structurally complement them with new ones, okay? And then, of course, we need to get the gender equality plan approved. So just check all the legal and institutional procedures and requirements to do so, right? If there is any register, official register, or if there is, whatever requirement. Here in Spain, for example, the union approval.